If you've ever thought about raising capital and immediately felt your stomach tighten, you're not alone. Because it's not just about getting money into the business. It's about getting the right money, on the right terms, from the right people, at the right time, for the right reason. Today we're talking about the capital raise process and strategy, the real world and variety of different approaches, and why an intermediary, both the right person and the right system, can be the difference between a decent outcome and an optimal one.
And we're not only talking about high-growth startups chasing a big round. This applies if you're raising for growth, for working capital, or if you're doing a full or partial exit and want to take some money off the table. It also applies whether you're looking at debt, equity, or something in between. The big idea is simple. You don't have to do it alone, and doing it alone can be more expensive than it looks.
Let's start with a quick framing. When people say capital raise, they often picture one thing: pitching investors. But capital can come from lenders, private credit, banks, strategic investors, family offices, funds, or hybrid structures. And each has different expectations around risk, control, reporting, collateral, covenants, speed, and price.
Exactly. So before any process, there's a basic question. What are you actually trying to achieve? Not I want to raise 10 million, but what outcome do I need? Do you need runway? Do you need to buy inventory? Do you need financing that grows with revenue? Do you want to de-risk personally with a partial exit? That outcome drives the structure, and the structure drives who is even a fit.
So today, we'll walk through a practical process: discovery, engagement, preparation, matching, negotiation, final due diligence, and then contract and close. And through each step, we'll keep coming back to 4 priorities: fit, transparency, efficiency, and staying focused on the outcome.
And we'll compare what it looks like when a founder or management team runs this themselves versus bringing in an intermediary, meaning an advisor plus a system. Not someone who just sends a few emails, but someone who can run a real process.
Let's jump into step 1. Discovery. This is a readiness check. What's the purpose of the raise? How clear is the desired outcome? And how ready is the business to be underwriter ready or investor ready?
This is where a lot of teams skip ahead. They think, we'll figure it out in diligence. But discovery is where you identify the gaps early. Maybe the financials are messy, maybe the story isn't consistent, maybe customer concentration is a risk you haven't explained, maybe margins fluctuate and you don't have a good narrative for why.
And discovery also includes the honest question: what kind of capital can you actually support? If you take on debt, can the company service it through cycles? If you take equity, are you comfortable with dilution, governance, and the expectations that come with external shareholders?
Let's do a quick review of debt and equity here. Debt, you usually keep more control, and the cost can be predictable. But the basics are repayment obligations, covenants, collateral, and less flexibility if performance dips. Equity, no mandatory repayment and often more strategic support. But the basics are dilution, potentially more oversight, and alignment issues if the investor's timeline or priorities don't match yours.
Now step 2, engagement. This is where people misunderstand what an intermediary actually does. Engagement isn't just hiring an advisor. It's aligning on fit and finding the right combination of people and system to get you to the outcome effectively and efficiently.
When we say fit, we mean fit in 3 directions. First, the advisor has to fit your situation: industry knowledge, capital markets familiarity, and the ability to communicate your story. Second, the process has to fit: timeline, confidentiality, internal bandwidth. Third, the capital sources have to fit: mandate, check size, risk appetite, and how they behave in diligence and negotiation.
And the system part matters more than people expect. A good intermediary brings a repeatable process: how data is organized, how outreach is tracked, how a pipeline is built without chaos, how narrative stays consistent, how deadlines are managed, how Q&A is handled. So the team isn't answering the same question 15 times in 15 different ways.
There's also the emotional element. Founders are often negotiating while also running the business. That's a recipe for distraction. An intermediary can protect focus so performance doesn't slip during the raise, which is ironic but common. You start a raise, you get distracted, numbers soften, and suddenly your leverage disappears.
Okay, step 3, preparation. This is where you build the narrative, define the use of funds, and gather data and diligence materials. And this is probably the biggest area for transparency and efficiency.
Preparation is not just dumping files into a folder. It's deciding what story is true, provable, and compelling. What is the capital mandate? Why now? What changes because of this capital? How does it translate into growth, stability, or a clean exit path? And how do you support it with data?
Here's a common pitfall. Teams overpromise. They create projections that look impressive but don't match historical performance or operational reality. That can backfire fast in diligence. A better approach is building a narrative that's ambitious but grounded, and then highlighting the levers: pricing, retention, churn, sales efficiency, pipeline, unit economics, capacity constraints.
And if it's a partial exit, the narrative changes. You're not only funding growth, you're also talking about why taking money off the table is healthy. Maybe it's risk management. Maybe it helps retention of key shareholders. Maybe it's part of bringing in a partner who can help scale. It has to be framed clearly so it doesn't read as jumping ship.
Then step 4, matching. This is where most capital raises are won or lost, because it's tempting to spray and pray. Message everyone, take every meeting, hope someone bites.
But matching is about identifying the right lender and investor fit and connecting with an aligned narrative. The goal isn't maximum meetings. The goal is high-quality options. You want competitive friction, meaning you have more than one credible path, but you don't want a process so wide that it becomes confusing, slow, or inconsistent.
This is one of the strongest arguments for an intermediary. They can narrow the field to the capital providers who actually invest or lend in your category, at your size, with your risk profile, and with your structure. That saves time and protects confidentiality.
And it reduces what I call silent rejection. When you reach out to the wrong people, they often don't say, "You're not a fit." They just slow walk you, ask endless questions, and never get to a yes or no. Meanwhile, you think you're in a process, but you're not.
Matching also includes something subtle, creating alignment on how the story is told. If your narrative shifts between meetings, you lose credibility. If your metrics are presented differently to different parties, you create confusion. A structured intermediary keeps the messaging consistent while still tailoring it to what each party cares about.
Okay, step 5, negotiation. This is where the headline terms are discussed, but it's also where process and timeline get locked. And negotiation is not only price. It's covenants. It's liquidation preferences. It's board rights. It's information rights. It's warranties. It's conditions to close.
And this is where fit shows up again. Some capital looks cheap, but comes with tight restrictions. Some looks expensive, but gives flexibility that's worth far more. The right outcome might be maximum cash today, or it might be flexibility, speed, certainty of close, or protecting control.
An intermediary helps here in 2 ways. First, they keep you honest about trade-offs, and second, they prevent you from negotiating against yourself. If you have multiple interested parties, they can manage communication so you maintain leverage without burning trust.
And they can also act as a buffer. It's easier to say no, push back, or ask for clarification when it's coming through a process leader. Founders often want to preserve relationships, which can lead to accepting terms they shouldn't.
Step 6. Final due diligence. This is the bread and butter grind. Data verification, customer references, legal review, financial quality of earnings if applicable, collateral audits for some debt structures, security reviews, compliance checks.
Here's a truth. Diligence is not just verification. It's also the moment when the capital provider decides whether they trust you. Speed and organization aren't just nice. They signal competence. If diligence turns messy, the other side starts assuming there are hidden problems.
And this is where a system advisor shines. A good data room structure, a clean Q&A log, clear ownership of responses, and consistent documentation can literally change the outcome because it reduces uncertainty. Less uncertainty often means better terms and fewer last-minute conditions.
Finally, step 7, contract and close. People think, We got a term sheet. We're done. Not even close. You need to get definitive documents finalized, conditions satisfied, timelines managed, and internal stakeholders aligned. And you need to avoid a late-stage squeeze where terms quietly worsen because you're tired and time is running out.
And after close, there's a hidden part of the outcome: how the relationship starts. Was the process transparent? Did you set expectations correctly? Did you choose a partner who will be constructive when things go sideways? Because at some point, something will go sideways. That's business.
So, let's talk directly about the central claim: why an intermediary can make a difference. At the highest level, it's because they reduce three major risks: bad fit, wasted time, and poor leverage.
Bad fit looks like taking money that doesn't match your strategy. Like raising equity when you really needed working capital flexibility. Or taking debt that forces you to optimize for short-term cash flow when you're in a reinvestment phase. An intermediary helps diagnose fit early and keep the process aligned to the desired outcome.
Wasted time is a killer because capital raising is a parallel job. It steals attention from sales, operations, and hiring. And the irony is the business has performed well during the raise, or your terms deteriorate. A professional process brings efficiency: fewer wrong meetings, fewer repeated questions, fewer dead-end conversations.
And leverage is about having real options. If you only have one credible party at the table, you don't have much negotiating power, even if you're a great business. Creating the right amount of competitive tension without turning it into a circus is an art.
Now, we should be fair. There are realities to using an intermediary. Cost is one. Fees or success-based compensation can be meaningful. Another is choosing the wrong advisor. A misaligned intermediary can waste time, damage credibility, or push a deal structure that benefits them more than you.
Also, an intermediary isn't a substitute for leadership. The management team still has to show up, tell the truth, own the numbers, and run the business. If a company wants an advisor to sell a story the fundamentals don't support, the market will find out.
So, what should listeners look for if they're considering help? I'd break it into a few practical questions. Do they start with discovery, or do they jump straight to outreach? Can they clearly explain your outcome and how they'll measure success? Do they have a real system for preparation, matching, and diligence, or is it all ad hoc?
And ask about fit on their side. What deals have they done that are similar in size and structure? Who actually does the work day to day? How do they manage confidentiality? How do they prevent you from being overwhelmed with meetings and requests?
Let's land this with a simple takeaway. A capital raise is not a single event. It's a process. And the best process is one that stays anchored to outcome, prioritizes fit, runs with transparency, and protects efficiency.
Whether your goal is growth capital, working capital, or a full or partial exit, and whether you're considering debt or equity, you can absolutely do parts of it yourself. But you don't have to be alone. The right intermediary, meaning the right person supported by the right system, can help you get better options, better terms, and a smoother close while you keep running the business.
If you're listening and you're somewhere in that early should we raise stage, start with discovery questions. What's the purpose? What's the desired outcome? What constraints matter most? Control, speed, flexibility, cost, or certainty? Get clear there, and the rest of the process starts to look a lot less intimidating.
And if you're already mid-process and it feels chaotic, that's also a signal. The answer might not be work harder. It might be run a better process. Fit, transparency, efficiency, outcome. That's the North Star.